Hello again, this is episode 3 of how to write a bot using the Microsoft Bot Framework. In the last episode, we were left with the point where we were just looking at how the logic of the bot can work, how you can get a message coming in, how you can change the bot's behavior based on that message. We saw that working in the emulator by just simply sending in a message from the emulator, hello again, and then the bot responded with hello world, you said hello again. So how do we make the bot seem a little bit more intelligent than just churning out echoing text? Really, when we're talking about Microsoft Bot Framework, what we mean by more intelligent is actually the language understanding. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go off to a new site. So let's start the browser off again. Lots of mess in there. So let's come back here, and it uses an acronym called Lewis. So you'll often hear it called Lewis, and this is the main site here, Lewis.ai. Now we'll go to this straight off, but something a little bit special I need to tell you about this. So again, this is very similar as it was with the bot framework. You come in here, you can log in, sign up, you can carry on learning about it in here, all sorts of things you can carry on doing. The main thing to do is to sign into it. However, this is a site slightly more complicated than others, that underneath the covers this is using the cloud services of Azure. Normally you would just log into Azure and you would create a new service. Lewis is different. It's hosted on its own separate site and uses Azure in the background. So that adds a sort of level of complexity and confusion. And to add to that, this is a sort of American international site. If you're in Europe, you want to go to eu.lewis.ai. So that's where I am, at least. My politicians are trying to stop me being in the EU, but that's something else. We'll come in here. So again, you get the same sort of site, but this one is dedicated and more closely aligned to my location. So things in theory will be a bit quicker. So I'm just going to sign into this. So now we've logged in to Lewis, what we're going to do is create a new app. And I'm going to call this May Bot App. My culture is English. Now, it is important that you choose the language that you're going to use throughout with Lewis. It's a complicated reason to do with importing and to do with indexing. But just know that you really do want to choose your language that you're going to use throughout. If you are going to change language, then you may be better off creating another bot in that other language. I mean, this is a sort of moving sands as far as I'm concerned, but just know for now that you want to really choose the language that you want to carry on with. There's a few ones in there. For me, I'm going to stick with English, and we can type in a description. So the May bot tutorial. Oh, can't even spell that. Tutorial. Okay, so this has created our Maybot Lewis application, and just to sort of give you a whistle-stop tour of what we're looking at here, we've got a lot of sort of menu items down here. Intents and entities are probably the really important ones, intents being the main focus. And then over this other side is really the sort of testing phase. So you've got with the training and testing and publishing. So we'll show you what that all means. So when we create, what are we creating here? Right. So what I want to do with the bot is I want to kind of make something that seems a little bit like a politician, something that would, the sort of responses that you might want to get if you were interviewing a politician. So with my particular one here, we've got something called an intent. So when you ask, let's just pretend we're talking to a politician, when we ask them a question, they have to try and figure out what the intent is behind our question. Are we trying to ask them about a policy? Are we trying to make them trip up? Are we trying to get them to talk about hospitals? Are we going to try and take them to talk about military issues? And so that's kind of what the intent is. So when we create an intent, let's do that now. So let's create a, let's call it a health service intent. I'll just call it a health intent. I think I'll just call it health. Why not? So we create this health intent, and really there's nothing in here at the moment. So we need to feed it some examples. So let's sort of think what kind of things. Do you believe in a free health service? So that's automatically lowercase to all. Let's put it in here. That's fair enough, and it's giving the intent of health. That's fair enough. So we need to give it a few more. What are you going to do about the health service? Do you think the health service is working? Can I ask you about the health service? So you can see here, these are just normal kind of natural language questions. There's nothing particularly computerized about it all. We're just asking straightforward questions. And then what we're going to do now is train. So what's going to happen in the background now is that machine learning, all these buzzwords and AI, but effectively what we're going to be looking at those things and trying to think when another question is going to come in, is it going to be related to this? So when we go for the test, so it brings up a little bar here. Now I can type in something very specific here. So I can say, do you believe in a free health service? And now what that's going to do is it's going to look at the models here, so what this is, and it's going to say, well, I think your intent is, and it tells us what the intent is. So if we inspect this, we can see that what we sent in, what its syntax, it calls that an utterance. So our utterance is, do you believe in a free health service? So its top scoring intent, so it's not actually saying that there's necessarily only one possibility of the result, but it's saying our top scoring intent is health. Now, given that we've only really got two in there, health and none, you would expect this to work. And given that this matches an example perfectly, you would expect, you would expect the result to be health. However, what you might not expect is the fact that it's only 97.6% sure that it's health. You might think, well, why isn't it 100? Well, so machine learning is kind of savvy enough to think, well, I'm not really going to be sure that that's what you want. Perhaps they actually did mean another intent, even though it matches this one. So this is a kind of a lesson you really need to learn with Lewis, is that it's all about what the machine learning thinks it is. It's not about perfect matching. This isn't like computer science where the logic of 1 = 1 and everything is absolute. This is machine learning. This is all about percentages, and that's something you've really got to understand. And even if you were to put this model completely type in the same, so if you do this at home now and you're putting that in, you will almost certainly get a different result in here. And if I was just to create this up again and do it, I would get a different result again, even though I'd be typing in exactly the same order on exactly the same local machine. So basically, the thing to take away here is when you're using machine learning, you've always got to expect the results to be slightly different. And so it's a different mindset that you need to get into. So okay, we've we've got that in here, and we're typing that, and you're thinking, well, how's that going to be useful? The trick here is, because of this percentage learning, we should be able to type in things that don't have a match here, but have a match in a more kind of holistic way. So perhaps I would say something like, should we have a free health service? So this doesn't match anything in here really, but yet it's coming back and saying it's pretty strongly thinks we're talking about health. It's 93% sure. So I mean, obviously it's saying 0.9, and that's just the way the percentages are shown here. So that's what's called a double. So it's a 0.9 means 93%, because it's out of 1. 1's 100%. Yeah, so that's effectively what's going to happen here. So what was the other one we thought we could talk about? Create another intent. Let's create a new intent. Let's talk about defense. Spelled with a C. So let's type in something like, do we spend enough on NATO? Do we need a nuclear deterrent? I'm going to be spelling something wrong here, aren't I? Deterrent, that's not right. That's not right, is it? ENT. Terrible at spelling. So we can come in here, actually. Just edit that. Edit. There we go. Don't want bad spellings in there. That gives the machine learning a chance. Okay. Are we spending enough on the Navy? Should the Army be sent overseas? Should our aircraft carriers have planes on them? You'd be surprised. Right, okay. So we're doing something here. Again, we're just going to train this. Right, so again, we get a set of percentages here about what it thinks these matches are. Again, don't expect it to be 100%. These are just how it's doing its matching. So now we go back to the test, and something interesting has happened in the background. So now we've got a new intent. The test panel that we were using has been re-evaluated after the training. So you can see here that do you believe in free health service? Now I think that was at something like 96%, wasn't it? 96, 97%. So that's now dropped to 95%. And the one that didn't have a trained match or match with the training examples, should we have a free health service, that's dropped now from a sort of 90% to a 70%. Now it still is a good match, right? 70% is a good match. I mean, generally speaking, on the projects I've worked with, we usually use sort of 50% as our sort of cut-off point between what we think is a decent match or not. So 70% is still okay. But as you can see, the more intense that the machine learning has to process, the more cautious it is about assigning a value to an utterance. So again, this is something about machine learning that you've got to get your head around, in that just because you saw one value at one point in time, that value can now change. So the testing in machine learning is an interesting challenge. So we come here now and we should be able to start talking about stuff about naive. So I'm going to talk not about spending on the defense. I'm going to say, did you enjoy your trip to the Navy headquarters? So what's happening here is that is a completely different kind of intent as a human, right? So these intents that I've been talking about here, these are all kind of questions. Should we be doing this? Should we be doing that? They're kind of hard-hitting political questions. Whereas coming in here, we've said, did you enjoy your trip to Navy? Completely different kind of thing. But the machine learning, the intents that it's got, it knows that we've been talking about Navy, right? So it goes, well, I think that basically what you're telling me is something to do with defence. So as if we were to implement this Lewis in our bot, i.e. our bot's going to be using this to pretend to be a politician, then when we're asking anything about Navy, anything about probably nuclear, so that's probably a good one. So again, should we be building more nuclear power stations? So this isn't about defence at all, right? Really, this is about power in the country. Now this is going to go, well, nuclear, obviously you're talking about defence, right? So it's going to say 80%. So again, if you're doing this in the bot, maybe the bot would start going on about how much money and recruiting we're putting into the armed services, whereas our question was, no, hang on, we're about using coal-fired power stations and nothing to do with the army. What a strange response. So what we've got to do is when we create a bot, if you're trying to make it seem intelligent, then really the two mechanisms for doing that are keep the bot narrow. So in this case, this would be a bot that was about the defence of the country, or you could say we could provide a lot of intents, so we make it a broad bot. So in that case, if we're talking to, say, in the UK, a prime minister, or in the US, a president, you would expect them to have a broad knowledge about all the different services. I mean, expect away, right? But the idea here would be that the intents across would be a broad spectrum of intents, and you'd be more likely to be able to respond with a better result by having more intents. That's a rambling nonsense. So let's just do that. So we come into the intents again, and let's create another one. I'll call it frequent power. Is that a good one? This is why you spend half your time in development trying to think of different names for things. Yeah, I'll just call it power for now. So we could say, are we spending enough on green energy? Should we be removing all of our coal-powered generation? Should we be building nuclear power stations? So now we've got nuclear in two intents, right? Save here. So this is only 3 examples. That's bad news, really. We should be minimum of 5 is the recommendation. So I'll try and come up with some more. Are we investing in wind power? Why have we stopped investing in wave power? Okay, so we've got our 5 examples. We're going to train that. Go back to our test panel. Okay, that's slightly. So should we be building more nuclear power stations? So that was defence right before, and now it's swapped over to 90% power. So the machine learning now has, because it has this new intent, it's now swapped over and gone, right, it's not talking about defence just because you said nuclear, but your phrase, should we be building more nuclear power stations? Oh, that's almost, unfortunately, it's almost exactly the same match to that, but not quite. So anyway, it's good. So did you enjoy your trip to the Navy? So that's now gone down to almost to my threshold of 50%. That's really close to not being a good match. Should we have a free health service? Now that's going to drop down to 60%. Do you believe in free health service? Still health. So we're still kind of hanging together here. If I was to say, should we be refitting our nuclear submarines? Ooh, see, now this is interesting. So it's said power for this one. It's reasonable, right? It's the nuclear. But it's not that convinced about it, right? It's 40% match. So if we inspect this, we are inspecting it. It's coming up with the top intent of being power. Now I could just come in here and edit that and say, well, do you know what? You're wrong. This one is defense. And train that. So what's happened now is it's taken my changes into account. So I haven't altered anything in the main model here. This is all about how I'm explaining to the machine learning that it got it wrong. So here, that's gone up to 90%. That's still okay. We're still living with these. But now, we haven't trained anything about submarines before, but submarines are obviously normally a defense issue. So if I said something like, do you think we have enough submarines? So now, because I've trained this should be refitting on nuclear submarines, it's now seen submarine and gone, well, okay, previously we were told that submarines were about defense. So now I'm going to say this thing here, which I really have no clue about before, it's now gone, right, well, I'm pretty sure we're talking about defense, and you'd be right. So this is a kind of bit of a whistle-stop tour of Lewis, but hopefully you get the idea of this is kind of how the brains of the bot will be formed. So that's going to be it for now. Again, I'd recommend you sign in for this. You start playing around with this. It's pretty much free to start with. Certainly if you have a kind of low threshold of usage. So you should be able to play with this and try it out for yourself. It's can be quite good fun to get it working. The other issues around here we'll get onto at a later date. So I think we'll leave it there for today, and we'll come back next episode and learn how to get the bot using some of these intents. Thank you.